Okay. All right, Tammy, thank you for joining me. Today is going to be super fun. I'm Julia and this is Tammy, and we're both from ITM Events. And we are learning so much about the virtual events that we are working on. And we wanted to take a minute to share a little bit about what's going on with virtual and kind of the technology and how planners are having to learn and adjust very quickly. All right. So, Tammy, are you excited to be here?
I am so excited. Yeah, no, I know that this is a whole new world for everybody, and I'm just excited to share some of what I've learned so far.
Amazing. All right, so we're just going to dive right into our questions, and hopefully we'll share lots of great content. And as always, if you have any questions, we're always here to answer and help out however we can. So, Tammy, before COVID, how much do you think you knew about virtual events?
So that's a good question. I would say little or nothing, pretty much, because it just wasn't something that we had to focus on. So definitely before COVID, didn't really know anything.
Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, before COVID, how much do you think you really knew or understood about AV and the tech side of events?
So I would say about a 3 out of 10. And that's just, I knew the basics of like stage stuff, in person, AV, in person tech, but on a minimal scale, because obviously we always had an AV company that would back us up. So we
Right.
had a basic understanding. I had a basic understanding of it, of what I needed to know, but definitely not what you need to know now.
Awesome. Okay, so as of today, now that we are 6 months in and we've been working together for 3 months now, I think. So we've been hands in virtual events for 3 months. How would you rate your knowledge now?
So I would definitely rate it as an 8 out of 10. I mean, I certainly believe that there is always something to learn, and there's always updates and different things going on that are, there's always something to learn. But I would definitely say it went from a 3 to 8. That's for sure.
That's a pretty quick jump.
It is. It is. Yeah. I mean, we had to, like,
Right.
the virtual world came, pandemic hit, virtual world came, and it was like all hands in, and it was just on deck and learning as much as you possibly can.
Awesome. Okay, so you and I have been chatting about how much you're learning as we prepare to go live for one of our clients' events. Can you share a bit about that learning curve and what that looks like for planners who are moving into the virtual space?
Yes, definitely. So it is a huge learning curve. It's not impossible, but not having an AV background or tech background, learning different terms like live, like even just a live stream, even just like, different things like that, RTMP streaming, etc. So definitely terminology was definitely something that we had to learn, that I had to learn and get on top of and Google what each thing means. And I think the biggest things were what I learned. One big thing that I learned was that it's not there. There are so many platforms out there, so many platforms that you can use in the virtual space, and it can get very overwhelming. The key really is to meet with your clients and to understand what their key objectives are. What is it that they can't live without in the virtual for their virtual event, and then you pick the platform from there based on that. That's going to maximize and be able to do as much as they possibly want to do. And also another thing that I would give as advice and that I've learned is that in-person and virtual are very, very different. You cannot exactly replicate an in-person event. It just doesn't work. So you really have to strategize on what it is that you want to happen. And engagement is key. That is my favorite word, I would say. Just because in person, there's a lot of engagement that already happens because you see people, they're around, you talk to them, there's different things going on. But in a virtual space, you're literally staring at your computer screen. So, and you're also distracted by like the dishes that need to get done, the child that won't stop screaming at you, your inbox filling up with emails. So definitely engagement in each possible piece that you can think of. And another really big learning is we need to really walk people through things. So we need to make sure that the attendees There's intro videos that go out to explain like how to use the platform, because I love this analogy of like you walk into a boardroom, you have a table, people know what to do. They know that they need to sit down and generally need to know where they go, or they just ask somebody if they're lost. But when you're in a virtual platform, you don't have that benefit. So the best way that they can get the most value out of the virtual event is by knowing ahead of time how to navigate themselves around and where to go, so that they don't have to waste that time during the event and they can just focus on the education that you want them to focus on. So those are some of the big learnings and some advice I would say for planners as well.
Yeah, those are huge. Like things that we take for granted in a live world. The communication part is the key one for me. Like even at the actual event, like it's so different. Like you said, that boardroom feeling, or the people walking into a hotel because they know they're going to attend a meeting or a conference. They know what to do. They know to look for signs. They know to ask for help. They know all of those things. And in the virtual world, like people are literally sitting by themselves in their home. And if we haven't communicated clearly enough, they don't necessarily know what to do. And if they're not tech savvy, they're afraid to push buttons and they're afraid to move around. So if we're not hand holding through that whole process, it's going to be painful.
Yes, there was a great article I read recently that was treat your attendees like children. You know how you have to tell a child to put on their hat or their coat like a million times? Do the same thing with your attendees. And it's just to make their process easier. And yes, Julia, you touched on a really important part. Communication, I was talking about ahead of time, but communication within the event as well is so key. Like I identified that we needed 2 moderators. We needed 2 people so that they could navigate people around, even though we told them ahead of time. You know, you can't really blame them. It's all new. And so you really have to be communicating with them at every possible touch point that you can. So communication and having moderators during the event are definitely key as well.
Yeah, and I think with all of us being planners, like we've spent the last 6 months demoing systems, checking into the system. So we're starting to get a feel for how all the systems work, because generally they're all very similar. So we start to get to like, we're starting to recognize like, okay, stage, this probably means when all of us are together, we're going to go to this area, or breakout rooms. This means we're going to click on this room setting, you know, whatever. But for people who aren't in our industry, or people who are not attending, like who maybe if your target market, the people that are going to be attending are the general public. And if they're not necessarily working on Zoom or working through technology all the time, it's not going to be a natural feeling for them to know how to navigate the spaces. And all of them are so different, but when you're in it, we know they're all very similar. They're laid out differently, or the words are different that they're using. But for people who are not familiar with that, if we take them from a Zoom meeting, so if they've had to attend a Zoom thing for like once or twice for work because they're just figuring things out, and then we throw them into a more complex, up-to-date, more tech-savvy platform, they're going to sit there and be like, I don't know what I'm looking at, and I don't know, like, why don't I see other people? Why can't I talk to other people if it's not the same system they're used to using?
Exactly. Yes, definitely. That is very, very true. Very true.
Yeah. So many things we have to be thinking about.
So many things, so much
So many
more
things.
in person. That's for sure.
Okay, so my next question. I often feel like I'm a pessimist because I talk so much about preparing for the worst. In preparing for the worst, what have you discovered about the virtual event space?
So preparing for the worst is key, and you know, rehearsal is, I can't even stress it enough. I have learned so much. An example would be I was running an event recently, and I was running an event recently, and one of the things I learned is that I needed to download an external software to share my audio on a video that I was sharing. And I would not have known that if I hadn't pre-tested before the test. So I was pre-testing at home on 2 laptops and realized the audio didn't work. And I was like, oh my gosh, why is it not working? And through troubleshooting and research and reaching out to the support team, I was able to figure out you know, how to make it work. So that's just one example. It's a simple thing. Like it wasn't simple, but it's one little piece that can really make a difference, because if you're playing a video and you can't hear it, there's no point in playing the video. So so I think we have to, like in you know, planning, we always talk about risk management, and that is so key. So I think, you know, definitely you have to be a pessimist in a way when it comes to planning, so that you can think of every possible scenario that could go wrong, so that you can fix it ahead of time, so that the experience is as streamlined as possible and as pleasant for everybody.
Yes. How many times do you think you, or actually not how many times, how many hours do you think you spent testing this system that we were just working on, before we even went to our live test with actual people who were attending?
Oh my gosh, a lot. I would probably say a good like 5 hours probably of like just between testing it a bunch of times, making sure it's still working, it testing it at different times a day is really key as well. This is something I've learned is, you know, you want to, especially if you're using like your home Wi-Fi or your home hardwired in, very key. You want to make sure that you test it at different times during the day, just because like things can go down, service can be interrupted. So if, you know, example, like we ran the event in the afternoon, the test event in the afternoon, and I also pre-tested in the afternoon because the event itself is going to be in the afternoon. So things like that, definitely, it takes a lot of hours, that's for sure, but it's so worth it. It is so worth it.
So worth it, 100%. Do you have any advice for companies or organizations who are hoping to do their virtual event in-house? So I think that's a lot of us are seeing that a lot of companies are figuring, well, it's just a Zoom meeting, it's fine, we can just do this on our own. What advice can you give those organizations to help them think through that decision maybe a little bit more clearly?
Well, definitely hire somebody like us. And that's just because our heads are in it. We are essentially researching constantly, iterating, you know, checking things. And so, you know, our brain is there, and also the planner brain in general, like we said, think of the worst scenario. That's what we're, you know, experienced in doing. So definitely, if you can, hire an event planner for sure. Somebody that's just going to help you walk through things and think of all those possible scenarios, so that you can focus on the content and the education of what's going to happen, and we can focus on the troubleshooting and, you know, the actual technology working. Obviously hiring an AV company in there too if it's a bigger event, you know, making sure, because, you know, you're kind of hostage to people's, you know, internet connections, I say. So definitely, and laptops and such, you know, you know, there's no fancy setups unless you're like a big AV company. So definitely doing that. And if you must do it yourself, if it's a smaller meeting, I mean, do Zoom. Zoom is wonderful in terms of audio, but it's boring and people are zoomed out. So if you can figure out a platform that you can use that's pretty user friendly, definitely do that. And yeah, just make sure that the biggest key components are hardwire in your internet. Make sure that you're doing that so that you have any backup systems. You can even buy backup batteries that you can plug into your modems that you can use. And yeah, just making sure that nobody is playing video games while you're, you know, trying to stream your event live, because, you know, no Fortnite going on, because, you know, we don't want that happening. You're not using any other systems that are using up your Wi-Fi. But really, if you must do it, those are kind of some of the biggest things I would say. But definitely easing your concerns with hiring somebody like us and getting an AV company on board for a bigger meeting, I would definitely suggest.
I think you had a couple good suggestions for our test run the other day too. I thought one of the really good ones was clearing your computer, like shutting everything down and rebooting, so that you don't have anything running in the background that maybe you've forgotten about that's using up internet access, or could set off some dings or reminders, or screen, you know, if you're sharing your screen and you got some embarrassing text that pops up in the middle of your screen or something, like, so just kind of like going back to basics and starting over before your event, so that everything is clean and fresh. Like even just for us to do this today, like making sure we shut off our phone, shut off internet, shut off our chat functions, all of that, so that you're not getting beeps and whistles and all kinds of stuff going on the computer. So
yeah, things definitely do like to play in the background. So restarting your computer is definitely key, so that you can just, yeah, like Julia said, make sure that you don't have any of that going on. I mean, the worst is if you get like a text that pops up and it's like, you know, doctor's appointment at like, you know, whatever time, or, you know, child being difficult or whatever. You don't want that happening while you're going live. So definitely. Yes.
Awesome. All right. So thank you, Tammy. I'm so grateful to have you on our team because you have done such amazing work researching and learning all the platforms and demoing and talking to all the different companies. And I really feel that we're providing the best service and the best systems available to our clients because of all the research and work you're doing. So thank you for that. Along with working with me, I know you also own your own company. So I'd like to give you a minute to kind of promo who you are and what you do when you're not working with me, and tell people where they can find you and who you're looking to work with.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you, Julia, and thank you for the opportunity. It's been a lot of fun learning this new space. And yes, so on the side, as Julia had mentioned, I own a company called TA Speakers Management. So my background is in speaker management. And basically, I work with two wonderful, wonderful speakers right now that are just lovely. And I do also do consulting on the side as well. So really for any keynote speakers that are established that, are busy and they need some help with the logistics, or they need some help with their marketing, or they need some help with just their business development overall, I can definitely help with those things because I have the planner side, so I know what planners are looking for. And then also I have the speakers management side as well. And you can reach me at tammy@taspeakersmanagement.com.
Yay, awesome. All right. Okay, so that's it for today. I hope our advice has been helpful. And if you are in the middle of planning your own event and you are struggling and think you may be in over your head, please don't hesitate to reach out. Our expertise is actually helping with events with short timelines. So if you are even, 3 weeks, 6 weeks out from your event and you are now scrambling and think you could probably use an extra hand, that's what we're here for. And that's what our expertise is. We are happy to jump in and rescue you and help things go off smoothly. So
Yes,
thank you so much for joining us today, and reach out if you need us anytime.
thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.